All right. Well, welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, May 23rd. My name is Donald Hovis, and I am your CWRAP host from the Chicora Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Joining us today is the president and co-founder of the SanFilippo Foundation. Joining us from Columbia, South Carolina, Mr. Glenn O'Neill. Glenn, I have a bio of yours, and I will read that now before we get started. So Glenn O'Neill is the father of Eliza O'Neill, who was diagnosed in 2013 with SanFilippo Syndrome, MPS 3. He is the co-founder and president of the 501c3 nonprofit Cure SanFilippo Foundation. With a mission to advocate and fund research for treatments or a cure for all SanFilippo syndrome children. In 9 years, the foundation has grown to include more than 100 families of children with SanFilippo syndrome around the world. The team approach has raised more than $12+ million for research to support Cure SanFilippo Foundation's mission. The foundation has helped fund 35+ grants around the world, which have led to 3 clinical trials now underway so far. Please welcome Glenn O'Neill.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now to take you through a short PowerPoint. Just give me a moment. Excuse me, let me go back. There we go. Everyone see the screen okay? Great, thank you. So again, my name's Glenn O'Neill. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to your Rotary Club and everyone who's following on Facebook. So I'm going to start this with a 3-minute video. So I'd like you to watch that video now that kind of sets the stage for some things we'll talk about, not only on my family's journey, but our nonprofit foundation as well. So I'm going to share a short video, 3 minutes.
Kara always wanted a daughter. We had a couple miscarriages, and then finally we get very lucky and have Eliza.
I would describe Eliza as a very affectionate child. Happy, very active, and a little girl that kind of keeps you on your toes.
It was just great for 2.5, 3 years. I would say we have the perfect, just the perfect life. I didn't even go to the meeting when the diagnosis was received. I wasn't even at that. It was another just check it off the list to make sure that this isn't what it is. I didn't even know what the meeting was. I didn't even know there was a genetics meeting happening, honestly.
They just said, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'll just tell you like it is. She's got SanFilippo syndrome, and having heard about the syndrome before through my medical training, that sinking just pit of your stomach, like, this is really bad. This is really bad.
You know where it's headed. It's headed towards suffering. It's headed towards pain for her. And as a father, you want to be able to protect your children.
If the money doesn't come in time, she'll stop speaking within the next 6 months. She will stop walking within the next 2 years. Stop being able to feed herself within the next 3 to 4 years. She will develop seizures and movement disorders, experience a lot of pain and suffering, and then she'll die.
The donations that come in are going to fund this clinical trial and fund a chance at life for Eliza. That is the hope we hold on to.
Hope is a nice word, but we need action. We don't just have hope. There is something very real that exists that with enough money will happen, and will happen in time for our Eliza and other kids.
It is so close. We're just so close to this being done and being put in children. It's going to be hit or miss.
It's not a question of, if this can happen. I mean, this will happen.
Please share. Please share.
So thank you for watching that. That's hard for me to watch. That video was from 9 years ago now today. So I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about our journey and how we got to where we are today. So as you saw in the video, as I mentioned, we felt like we had the perfect life. We had a healthy son and what we thought was a healthy daughter. My son was 6 at the time. And as my daughter was growing, 1, 2, ages 1 and 2, there we didn't see many challenges or issues. She was hitting milestones, doing what she needed to do, and just having a wonderful relationship with us. She began to speak, she began to talk, sing songs, dance. My son and her had a brother-sister relationship. It was really beautiful. And then things began to show up, different things that we weren't real sure why they were happening. She wasn't socializing at school the same way as other kids. She began to fall behind in speech, and we didn't know why. And my wife, ironically, was a pediatrician for special needs children. So she was certainly interested in why these things were happening, why she wasn't on where she should have been for the typical curve. But again, a lot of these things you write off as my son was very precocious and he talked a lot. So we would say, oh, he's doing a lot of the talking for her and things like that. And what we ended up finding was a diagnosis of SanFilippo syndrome, as you saw in the video. And this was after many different tests and an autism diagnosis, which my daughter received first. And this is a picture of again, 2 of the girls that were in that video, my daughter and Izzy. And you can see what this disease does to these children. It's a rapidly degenerative and fatal genetic disease. It's often referred to being like a late stage Alzheimer's. My grandfather passed away from Alzheimer's. My father passed away from ALS. Those are obviously not related to SanFilippo, but I've seen these types of diseases before take a loved one away. And if you've seen it and have lived it, it's horrendous. And to think that's happening to your 3-year-old daughter is very hard. It's an enzyme deficiency, and it leads to this accumulation of heparan sulfate, which is something all of us are, healthy people are able to dispose of their bodies. We don't know that we're able to do this, but we're able to do this. And these kids with SanFilippo are not able to. This heparan sulfate builds up in their bodies, it builds up in their brains, and it begins shutting down critical life functions. This starts at birth, but begins catching up and really kind of affecting things around age 2 or 3 for these children. So very, very early in life. There's 4 different types of SanFilippo: A, B, C, and D. A and B are the most common and the most severe and progressive. My daughter has type A. They're all very, very bad though. And they all have the same sort of things that happen in the disease, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's a rare disease, and it's 1 in 70,000. So that is a very rare number, but that does come to about 15,000 to 20,000 children around the world that have this. And those that, are undiagnosed, we don't know how many are undiagnosed with this, living with maybe just an autism diagnosis. The carrier rate for this, so my wife and myself both had to be carriers for this. And again, we'll see another slide on this, is 1 in 133. So if you think of, I'm in Columbia here, so Williams-Brice Stadium, when it's packed, there's a lot of carriers that have potential to have SanFilippo. Now, 2 carriers would have to get together and have a child with it, of course, but there are a lot of carriers out there with this SanFilippo syndrome, potential to have a child with SanFilippo syndrome. Some of the symptoms, and this kind of chart shows the early symptoms and then some of the later symptoms. And, looking back, my daughter had many of these. She had fast breathing at birth. She did have some coarse facial features. She had recurrent ear and sinus infections, which just, they just seem to continue to coming, tubes, and then another set of tubes. She did have hyperactivity, a lot of hyperactivity, a lot of the features from autism. And again, these children, many of them do get first diagnosed with autism, which is a correct diagnosis because they do exhibit the symptoms of it, but it's just not the full diagnosis. And oftentimes, pediatricians and doctors and geneticists need to look a little bit deeper to see if something is making these children have these autistic symptoms. And sleep was a big challenge as well. And this was the chart that kind of shows how it is passed down. So again, my wife and myself were unaffected, meaning we didn't have SanFilippo syndrome, of course, but we had this hidden genetic matchup that we didn't know about. Again, once you're both carriers, you have a 25% chance of having a child with SanFilippo syndrome, a 50% chance your child will not have SanFilippo syndrome, but will be a carrier. So in future, their future life, they will have to have that consideration of being a carrier for SanFilippo. And then you have another 25% chance your child won't have SanFilippo and won't be a carrier. So obviously, my son thankfully did not have SanFilippo, but my daughter did. And, we know families that have a 6-year-old diagnosed with SanFilippo and they already have a 3-year-old and an infant, and come to find out that their 3-year-old and infant also have SanFilippo syndrome. And we have families of 2 and 3 children that have it. So you can imagine the devastation on a family like that. So it's very, very tragic, this disease. And this is a chart of what, the typical children. The black line that kind of goes on the straight line is what typical children learn and how they progress, typically. And SanFilippo syndrome is the blue line. And again, these are based on averages. So every child, even with SanFilippo syndrome, can fluctuate. Some things happen at a little bit older age. Some things happen sooner. Some children never speak with SanFilippo syndrome. Thankfully, our daughter was able to speak. But you can see that the disease begins, at least on the averages, when they looked at many, many children in this disease, begins to really impact these kids between age 2 and 3. And that's when diagnoses begin to happen usually. And then from there, it's obviously a very, very devastating road. And, even when I was found out, Eliza had it, I remember my wife, I wasn't at the meeting, at the appointment, like I mentioned. I wish I was, of course, but my wife texted me and said, come over to Greenwood Genetics. It's not good. And even thinking not good on the way over, all I could think of was, maybe she had a little bit worse of a severe of a type of autism, but something we could handle. And never in would I ever think a disease like this even existed. I was not in the world of. My wife was obviously a special needs pediatrician, but I didn't get involved in her work much. So I didn't know diseases like this could even exist, quite honestly. And, even in the doctor's office, I probably should have been Googling it, but I was, and this is again 9 years ago, and finding out that the disease was terminal, usually in the teen years, I thought, well, gosh, we've got, 10, 15 years to be able to really attack this and do something about it. It wasn't until I got home and saw charts like this and natural history studies that were done that you realize how quickly the skills begin to be impacted for these children and critical life functions are lost, unfortunately. So we kind of got together and said, what are we going to do? We looked around the United States, and my wife had talked to some scientists and researchers and biotech companies and realized it takes millions to move the needle in rare disease research. Unfortunately, that's just the facts. And we didn't see a foundation that was out there today that was raising millions specifically for SanFilippo syndrome research. So we said, let's go out and try to do it. Let's go didn't know what we were doing. I worked in procurement and business. And obviously my wife's background was tailor-made for this, but we didn't know a whole lot about creating a foundation. We said, let's just go out there and try to make a big splash. Let's try to put this name of this disease worldwide, get everybody knowing. It's why it's so important. And we're so thankful to be talking to you today about it. But what happened was that video that we showed you, we had raised about $250,000 up to the point where we released that video. And we were thankful. $250,000 was a lot of money, but again, we needed millions. And at the time, everyone was pointing towards this gene therapy project at Nationwide Children's Hospital in Ohio for SanFilippo that they needed to get up and running, but cost about $2 million. So we said, let's go out and try to do it. You know, we're doing the grassroots stuff. We've raised 250,000, but we need to blow something up big for the world and try to really make a major splash. So we had someone come in to make a video who did it on pro bono. We really got very fortunate. It was a random kind of Google search that I found somebody and reached out on the internet to them or on email. And they said, we'll come to your house. I'll do it for you for free. And they spent 8 days at our house, filmed 40 hours of video. And on April 2nd of 2014, this Saving Eliza video was released. And how it all came together is just miraculous, really. I mean, a complete blessing. But within 15 days of that video that you watched being released, it raised $500,000. Within a month, it raised $1 million. And by the end of the year, it raised $2 million. It put us on the Today Show. It put us on Inside Edition, the Doctor's TV show. And we were able to help fund that clinical trial get up and running. It's actually still going on today, 9 years later. My daughter was one of the children treated in that trial. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to be treated until about age 6. And she was treated with one of the first doses, which are the lowest doses that they start with. It's experimental, so they have to start with the safest doses. And we find out years later that, unfortunately, that dose wasn't an efficacious dose. We believe it still helped her in many ways. They're treating children much younger now at a much higher dose. But this video, and again, was something that really kind of, the local news did a great job. All the news stations in town, and then national news got on it as well. So it really put us out there and gave a name to our foundation and really allowed other families to find us, other families that were dealing with SanFilippo syndrome, a lot of the newly diagnosed families. And, they just started reaching out. It would be one family and then another family. And the light bulb went off for me. Like, these families want to advocate. They want to fight. They want videos. They want to be able to get involved in this cause. And that's what we did. We started, I realized I can help. We were able to do it here in town. So let's have these different pockets around the country of families advocating and fighting. And really, the supporters are the ones that we have to thank, the people that come out to these events, that donate to our causes, that watch the viral videos and share them. And we began telling the family stories on our website. So each family has a story, its own page on our website to advocate, to fundraise. As I mentioned in the bio, we have about 100 families now that work for us. There's obviously many, many more SanFilippo families around the country and around the world. But these are the families that work with our foundation and are out there doing this advocating, doing this awareness. We've been able to broaden our website to share our stories, to share the many different families that are fighting with us. And again, when it's a rare disease like SanFilippo syndrome, it's usually not, large pharmaceutical companies are not going to get involved because they don't see the profit potential in this. So it's left up to families, parent advocacy groups like ours to go out and do it. And while we try to get grants also, the grant funding from the NIH is very difficult to come by, but we try that. We would love to have $1 million or $1 billion donor. If everybody says, have you tried Elon Musk? Have you tried Bill Gates? Yes, we have. And they haven't come through. So you can either sit back and say, oh, well, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to hide in the closet and be depressed, which is easy to do. And there are those days for sure. Or you can go out and fight it. And we decided to fight it. And these families decided to fight with us. So it's very much a grassroots effort from 5Ks. We actually just did a 5K in town here, the Super Eliza 5K, which raised $17,000. And these are happening all around the country, 5Ks, golf tournaments, lemonade stands. And that's how it's done. And it's raised, $12 million over these past 9 years. And I'll show you some of the impact of what those dollars lead to. Something that we're having coming up soon, and again, this is not just here in Columbia, but around the country, is on Saturday, July 18th, is our big sale to save. It's families doing any type of sales, really, lemonade, yard sales, bake sales. And it's not just families, it's supporters and anyone who wants to get involved. And they do their own yard sale and they send the dollars into Cure SanFilippo Foundation. And this has raised, 1 year, it raised $45,000. So just on one day. So these types of grassroots efforts are truly so important to our cause and to our foundation. and it leads to research. And that's what we fund. We fund these different research projects. We don't put all our eggs in one basket, which is, we look at different therapeutic approaches. There's enzyme replacement, there's gene therapy, there's stem cell, there's trying drugs that are already approved by the FDA and running them through these tests to see, will they work, potentially on SanFilippo syndrome. My wife is our chief science officer, and she works with the scientific advisory board, our board of directors. And we're not just a grant making institution. We actually architect some of the science and come up with new ideas, taking some ideas off of other more common neurological diseases like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And some of the work we're doing can have benefits for these types of diseases too, because there are some things that are related, different reasons why they're happening. But again, we're a disease where we're a single gene defect. So one could think if we can figure out how to correct this, how to reduce this heparan sulfate buildup, that potentially children could go on to live some type of typical life, particularly with newborn screening, which our foundation works on as well. So a lot of work to be done, but this is just an example of the 37 research projects we funded. I think mentioned in the bio was it's led to 3 clinical trials for children that have treated over 45 children with this disease. And we're seeing promising results in some of them. We do have some challenges with the FDA and getting over these hurdles of trying to get approved treatments, but that's what we work on day in and day out. So what's next for the foundation? It's, again, thanks to the support, thanks to the amazing support, thanks to being able to share and spread awareness with folks like you. We do have a handful of clinical trials that are up and underway, but still no approved and available treatment yet. That's what we're out to change. And this happens by funding more research for more clinical trials, more tests to basically bring relief to these families and their children. You wouldn't wish this disease on your worst enemy. And it's something that needs to be stopped. And given some of the charts, you saw how rapidly degenerative and how early in life this begins impacting these children. So the sooner we can stop this disease, the more the relief there will be for these children and their families. And a little bit just on our family today, my daughter over the past 9 years has lost the ability to speak. She has lost a lot, quite honestly. She is having more trouble with mobility. She's having more trouble swallowing. She is 12 now. My son is now 15. And it has been a rough road for our entire family. And as a way to sort of get away from the reality of it is diving into this mission. We know that our daughter's life has purpose. We know that our life has purpose, and all these children with SanFilippo syndrome's kids' lives have purpose. And I think the purpose and the hope, even though we may know what the future is for our daughter, which is hard to accept, but it is in ensuring that this doesn't happen for future families. So thank you so much for being able to share this mission with you, this disease, this message. For more information, an easy way to get there to our website is curesff.org. I can provide you with any more information you need via email. So we'd love to stay in communication with you, and I'd welcome any questions. Thank you again.
Glenn, thank you for the presentation. I would ask you just leave this slide up so people can make sure they've got the website information. But I got a few questions. And out there, if you have a question, now would be the time to post that in the chat. We'll be cutting that off here in just a moment. But a lot of really good questions. You may have covered it, but I want you to reiterate it again. Can carriers be identified in potential parents?
Can carriers be identified? So currently, yes. So that's exactly what ends up happening usually when you're diagnosed, when your child is diagnosed. So immediately what my wife and I said, well, this is genetic. It came from one of our parents, so let's go and find out what parent it came from. So we can, because again, we know families who have cousins that have had it and distant relatives that also had a child with SanFilippo. So it's everybody's own decision to get tested or not, but we wanted to find out which side it came from on my family. So my father was tested. So yes, once it's in your family, you can be tested for SanFilippo syndrome. If you don't, yes, screening panels can be done for a couple that's getting ready to have children. Maybe they just got married or getting ready to have children. You can be screened, and what they would screen for is all the known variants, genetic mutations of SanFilippo syndrome that are known. Now, if my wife and myself had been on one of these panels, they wouldn't have found ours because ours had never been identified. It is now, thankfully. So these panels are getting better and better for families. And we're big proponents of young couples who have yet to have kids having the entire genetic panel done for as many of these diseases as you can. Because I can tell you, it changes your entire life when you get a diagnosis like this. It changes it on that day, and it changes it forever. So yes, you can be tested for the known variants of SanFilippo syndrome.
I believe you talked about this in your presentation. Is there any treatment for children with the syndrome?
So there's no FDA approved treatments, but we're not calling them treatments really, but what is being tested, our kids are getting treated with gene therapy and enzyme replacement in clinical trials. So they're not approved by the FDA. These are basically what we're funding as a foundation. And we're hoping that they find good results in these tests. And we are seeing a lot of promising results, especially in gene therapy and in enzyme replacement. So, but if you're diagnosed today, you can't go out and get something from a doctor or from a hospital because there's no FDA approved treatment yet. That's what we're working towards. And we believe that, it starts with something, and it may not be everything. It may not be a treatment that stops the disease and makes everything perfect. Just like cancer, there's different treatments that get better and better, and you have many over your lifetime. That may be the same thing in SanFilippo. We're trying to start with something that we know helps this disease, and then, build on that with better and better treatments as we go. But today, there is nothing available, an FDA approved treatment. We're out to change that.
So when was SanFilippo syndrome identified for the first time, and how did it get its name?
Yeah, good one. Yeah. So SanFilippo syndrome, which, the name is the name, and we can't change that. We don't love the name. It reminds you of, maybe a country in a different, or city in a different country. It was actually named by Dr. Sylvester SanFilippo back in the 1960s, who basically identified what the genetic mutation was and what was happening in SanFilippo. So it was named after him. Not as bad as the name SanFilippo is, but the actual name of SanFilippo syndrome, the real name is mucopolysaccharidosis type 3. It's part of these, right? It's part of these diseases called MPSs, and there's several. You might have heard of Hunter's syndrome and Hurler's syndrome. They're kind of related diseases. Of all the MPSs, SanFilippo syndrome is the most prevalent of all the diseases. But we stick with SanFilippo syndrome because the mucopolysaccharidosis is a mouthful, type 3. So.
And Glenn, are you a Rotarian?
I am not, but I'm certainly interested in. I was connected to a couple different Rotaries, and I think one of the participants in the Lake Murray connected us to Mary here that allowed us to talk today. So
perfect. So
thrilled to be here.
When I say this next acronym, you're probably not going to know what it is, but maybe a possible research contact for you to reach out to possibly connect with. Us as Rotarians, we have what is called the CART Fund, which stands for Coins for Alzheimer's Research Trust. Sorry, the T is for trust. I would invite you to reach out to them, to work with them on research. They do fund grants.
Thank you.
A lot of great things that the CART Fund does.
And Glenn, I'll send you some information on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We will do that for sure.
And that's all the questions I have. So, Glenn, thank you for sharing the story. Wow. I really appreciate your time. I hope everyone on here has wrote down the website for more information. And Mary, thank you for setting up the speaker. Glenn, thank you so much.
Glenn,
Mary,
I'll also get you some information to apply for some money from my club. A lot of clubs at the end of the year have funds available that they support different causes. So I'll get you the information to apply for it from the.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you so much. Like I said, every bit matters. And thank you all for the time and the space here to share this. This is truly what matters is folks going out and telling others and saying, hey, I heard about this today, because you really never know what that can lead to. And we truly appreciate the opportunity to talk today.
Mary, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I think he needs to be on all of our Rotary clubs in the Columbia area. This is so critical, and I've never heard of it.
I had not heard of it.
But like your club, all of our clubs have funds, and they just need to be aware of it. So can you, since you said you would send information, can you connect with the two AGs? And
Yes.
let's see what we can do to get him to present at each of our Rotary clubs in the Columbia area. I think
Yes, ma'am.
I think there's some real possibilities there.
Yes, ma'am, I will. And Ann has a lot of contacts as well, Glenn.
Thank you so much.
She and I will get together and get a list, and I'll help you wherever I can in getting set up with these clubs to give a presentation. I think the more you get out there, like Ann, I had never heard of it until Ken told me about it. And Rotary is so big on helping the children of the world.
Yes.
There are children right here in our own back door. We need to help them.
Yes. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Glenn, one final question, and then Mary, I'm going to ask you to tell us who's speaking next week. Glenn, is SanFilippo gender related?
It is not. There's no gender, no race. It crosses all children worldwide.
Thank you.
I will say there are pockets. So there are some pockets in different areas of Europe and Spain. You can imagine if it being genetic, there might be some different pockets there might be more type Bs or type As and things like that in different pockets of different countries, but it's all over the world.